The irony in life, I think, is that when you are repressing physically emotions, whatever it is, love, pain, fear, anxiety, rather than being fully open to them, it's actually more excruciating.
Hi, I'm Mayim Bialik, and welcome to my breakdown. This is the place that we break down the things that make us break down.
It's Mayim Bialik's breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you, because you know she knows a thing or two. So now she's gonna break down. It's a breakdown. She's gonna break it down.
Today, we're going to be breaking down, I don't want to call it performance anxiety, because I think that evokes
being in the bedroom.
Being in the bedroom. Stage fright also doesn't seem to sum it up.
Not the right terminology.
Today we're going to be breaking down anxiety of the actor variety. Actor anxiety.
Not only for actors, though.
But it's not only for actors. That's true. We're going to be speaking with an actor and writer who I really, really like very much. And we worked together on Big Bang Theory for, about a decade. Kevin Sussman is with us. Kind of known to be a very, anxious kind of character in the characters he plays. And we get to talk a little bit about what his anxiety looks like as a performer and also how the anxiety that he's experienced as a human has impacted his career, his acting, and also ways that he's kind of harnessed that for better mental health.
We also get into habitual physical tension, which is exciting.
Speaking of habitual physical tension, I'd like to introduce you to Jonathan Cohen.
Hello, Mayim.
My co-pilot. Jonathan, we're pretty in purple today, aren't we?
Very nice. And if you want to take a look at that, you can go to Mayim Bialik's YouTube channel, hit subscribe and the bell notification.
Ding!
To get new episodes. Also, leave us a review in the audio version of wherever you're listening. 5 stars helps us make more, and recommend us to a friend.
Do we have a word of the day?
We do.
Word of the day.
Today's word of the day, and sometimes the word of the day is a cluster of words, a topic, an idea, but today we're going simple, back to the old school. We're going with rumination.
Rumination.
This came up as it relates to ruminating thoughts.
Not to be confused with a ruminant stomach.
Not to be confused with that at all.
Ruminating is a term that is not used, it should not be used interchangeably with obsessing. But because everybody's like, I'm so OCD, I try not to use the word obsessing unless I'm specifically talking about obsessions as they relate to obsessions and compulsions. Ruminating is sitting on an idea, a feeling, turning it over repeatedly so that it continues to cause distress. Sometimes we turn something over and we process something and it can be alleviated. Ruminating tends to keep us in that kind of stew of whatever that negative emotion is. We typically don't talk about ruminating on positive emotions. That's just called feeling them. But ruminating is usually used for kind of words with more of a negative affect. And, if you've had a friend who should break up with a dude, but she just wants to complain about it all the time, also different than ruminating. If you constantly think about how much she annoys you, that's more like ruminating.
Often ruminating, there's moments or it's in an intense time period. You don't normally ruminate intensively over weeks, do you?
No, but I mentor some lovely young women, and sometimes they'll call and just be turning something on. Why? Why did this happen? Why did it happen? Why did it happen?
It's stuck in a thought loop.
It's stuck in a thought loop, and usually it's serving something, and it's our job as humans to figure out what that something is. A lot of times it prevents you from having to come up with a solution. It prevents you from having to move on. And if you come from a home or an environment where it's familiar for things to kind of be like this,
you're doing the turning, stabbing motion.
It's like a slow, painful stab. It's like ricing is the Yiddish word.
Usually you can feel trapped in rumination.
Yeah, but there's that is a loop that can be escaped. But anyway, that's rumination. Word of the day. So we're going to be talking, as I said, to Kevin Sussman, and we're going to be talking about anxiety. And anxiety is a word that's thrown around a lot. Anxiety is usually described according to the physical symptoms that we feel when we're anxious. Jonathan, you wanna choose a couple things that people say happen to them when they're anxious physiologically?
Increase of tension. They can have stomach problems. They
Stomach
can
problems.
have like fluttering heart.
Palpitations,
You
right?
describe a constriction in your throat at
Right.
times when there's anxiousness.
Also, sometimes like your throat gets dry.
You can lose the ability to think as clearly and coherently. I'd love the science behind that because you've explained it to me
Just
before.
everything's all messed up in your brain.
And that's the answer we're going with.
Sleep can be disrupted. Your eating
Sweaty.
can be disrupted. Sweaty palms, that'll happen. And sweaty palms is a great example of something that you don't see in depression, whereas those other things like disruption in sleep and disruption in eating, those can happen in depression. But yeah, anxiety is more of that inability to sit still, pacing, fidgeting, things that some of us do all the time, just as our baseline. Jonathan, what do you think some of the evolutionary advantages are for anxiety?
To stay alive.
Right. So if we didn't have a notion of anxiety, potentially dangerous sounds, smells, tastes might not produce any response from us, and we wouldn't know, don't go there, don't eat that, don't kiss him. Whoops. Anxiety does serve the purpose of keeping us vigilant, with the purpose literally of surviving. So the reason that we have it is because nature, she is very redundant. She's not going to create a brand new, template every single time we have a new species. So we have a lot of leftovers from our state of nature. And we also have to have a certain amount of vigilance, which can look like anxiety, in our modern life as well. So for some people, anxiety is more of a concern than others. Some people have more of a predisposition to having these kind of thought loops. And some people have more kind of anxious chemicals in them. I have a need to move my body. And especially when I'm tired, I have a need to move my body. But what's the most frustrating is when someone says, like, can you stop moving? Why are you pacing? Can you stop doing that? Because the fact is, I can, but it's what happens when I stop that's really unpleasant. So a lot of times what we see that we define as markers of anxiety, I'm a nail biter, I'm a cuticle picker. Some people will pick, even just like little things on their arm or on their face. I mean, really on any part of your body. A lot of people will eat anxiously. It's because there's a feeling or set of feelings or state that comes up, and the things that we see are the things that we do to try and make it go away. So when I bite my nails, I don't bite my nails because I'm anxious. I bite my nails because there's a feeling that I'm having that I'm trying to dissipate. I'm trying to give it a place to go. So for me, when I have movement and when I create movement, it creates a sensation that is more pleasant than the feeling I was having before when I was anxious. Are there times when I'm more anxious than others? Of course. Before I perform, before I have to go on stage. Really, anytime someone's yelling, roll camera, I feel it like it's like something turning over, it literally feels like something flipping over. And that's putting me in this new state of vigilance where I'm using as much of my faculties as possible to do the task at hand. And for me, that task is, trying to get as much blood to this here brain to remember pages and pages and pages of words and movements and continuity and props and all those sorts of things. So we need anxiety, but for some people it does run, a little bit rampant. And one of the things that actors experience is sort of a constant state of potential rejection, which can be very anxiety provoking. I think of kind of auditioning. It's not unlike having to have a very painful first date every single time you want a job. Like it's a big first date kind of experience. You're walking in to a room full of people you don't know. You're going to be judged on how you look.
It's a group date.
It's a weird, weird group date. And many people are surprised that, like, with practice, you don't get less anxious. No, I just don't. And people are like, why not? And I'm like, I don't know, but the proof that you don't is that I don't. So there are some people who say, like, oh, I'm nervous at first. And sure, the beginning of a taping is more anxiety provoking than the end of a taping. But even though I'm a brain scientist, like, I don't always know why that is. It often has to do with other things that are going on in my life. If I'm texting with a friend or I'm having an upsetting, this is me texting, an upsetting text exchange. It doesn't look like texting.
I don't know who texts quite like the first motion.
Also goes into a little Bee Gees action. But if I'm having an upsetting interaction, or if I'm worried about my kid, or if I'm not feeling well, that's going to raise my anxiety, and then everything will feel harder. Exactly the reason we started this podcast, because during the quarantine, what many people have noticed, and during really this whole year of experiencing COVID, many people have noticed that, I mean, they don't always call it this, but I like to point it out to them that that's what it is. If your baseline's normally here for anxiety, everybody's baseline has been bumped up a little bit. And for those of us who already have anxiety, like, everything just gets dialed up even more, so that when anything happens, I'm like right here ready to cry. You missed my action. I'm right here ready to cry. Or like if my kids do something that like I just like they're yelling at each other, I can't take the sound of your voices. Stop it. It's like that. And that's why we are yelling more at each other. That's why we're butting heads with each other more. It's why I'm crying a lot more during quarantine than ever before. I'm going to say it out loud because it's nothing to be ashamed of. My menstrual cycles have hit me much, much harder during the quarantine because my entire baseline system of anxiety is like, it's up here. I've had it up to here. I don't know that we can say that there are ways to make anxiety completely go away. However, there are a lot of very simple things that we're going to talk about. Kevin has some really interesting experience with this. And also we'll wrap up, in the conclusion and talk about some other things. We'll also put resources on our website, of course. With that, let's welcome Kevin Sussman. Let's have a good time talking anxiety with Kevin Sussman. Kevin.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by BetterHelp Online Therapy.
As we begin to see light at the end of the COVID tunnel, a lot of people are still feeling down and emotionally out of sorts. How about you, JC?
I only see light when I look at you, Mayim.
You may not feel depressed or at a total loss, but a lot of us are feeling a little bit off. Maybe our relationships are suffering. It could be a sign, I'd like to think it is a sign, that you should talk to somebody. And online therapy is here. It is in our lives and it can help. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. This is professional therapy that is done securely online. Jonathan, what do you do if you want to get to know BetterHelp?
Well, you fill out their online questionnaire that helps assess you and matches you with a professional licensed therapist. And you can start communicating with a therapist in under 48 hours, which is really fast.
You can also schedule secure weekly video, phone, or even live chat appointments. Therapists have a broad range of expertise that may not be locally available in your area. You can log into your account anytime. You can send messages to your therapist. BetterHelp is committed to great matches, and it is easy and free to change therapists if needed. We talk a lot about how important it is. Therapy is literally not really worth it unless it's a good match. BetterHelp is so committed to great matches. It is convenient and affordable to change your therapist if it's not a good match. And financial aid is also available.
If you've ever listened to this show, you know that almost every episode, Mayim tells me, get back to therapy, Jonathan. And BetterHelp is the best way to do it. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/break. That's betterhelp.com/break.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Rothy's.
It's 2021, and you know what no one has time for, Jonathan?
What's that, Mayim?
Uncomfortable shoes.
Hate uncomfortable.
That's where Rothy's comes in. Rothy's surveyed thousands of customers. The number one word used to describe their shoes is comfy. What makes them so good? Their unique seamless design. It's insanely comfortable the moment you put them on. Their fan favorite styles are sustainably made with materials like plastic water bottles. What? They're fully machine washable. They're available in tons of shapes, styles, and colors. You can always find the right one for you. Start summer off on the right foot with comfortable bestsellers like flats, loafers, and sneakers from Rothy's. Sandals? How about sandals? Yes. Plus, their spacious washable bags are perfect for summer getaways. I have the little Rothy's booties. I get compliments on them all the time. I have them in this like kind of strange mustardy color, and I love them. I wear them so much. They also have newly launched men's shoes that are intentionally designed with an artisanal level of detail, created with nearly zero waste. They're durable, washable, better for the planet. They result in the perfect fit wash after wash. Who What Wear says celebrities are far from immune from the draw of Rothy's wildly popular shoes. Pop Sugar named Rothy's one of the most comfortable and cute flats you'll never tire of wearing. Who better to tell you about how comfortable Rothy's are than real customers? Jonathan, what does Lisa L say?
These shoes are like walking on a cloud.
What does Julie A say?
No break-in period, no blisters, just pure comfort.
Rothy's best-selling shoe, which I have owned, the Point in Black, has over 5,000 near-perfect reviews. To help you welcome summer in style, Rothy's is doing something special. They gave us the chance to share a super rare opportunity with our listeners for a limited time. Through August 1st, 2021, you can get $20 off your first purchase of $100 or more at rothys.com/breakdown. That's ROTHYS.com/breakdown. Trust us, you don't want to miss this.
Head to rothys.com/breakdown to find your new favorites today. Mayim and Bialik's Breakdown is supported by ScoreMaster.
Jonathan, here's an American fact, even though you're Canadian. The average American has 97 points that they could add to their credit score and no idea how to get them. Well, the data scientists at ScoreMaster have cracked the code on how. 97 points is a very big deal. That's found money.
I want them. I want all the points.
You can't have them, you're not American. It means fast loan approvals, huge discounts, and low interest rates on everything, like buying or refinancing a home, leasing a new car, or, my favorite activity, applying for a credit card. How fast is ScoreMaster? Extremely fast. How about in 5 days, one member raised his credit score 33 points? How about give it a couple weeks, 43 points? ScoreMaster, how long does it take to get started, Jonathan?
Just a minute. Literally a minute to get started.
And if you hurry, you can get ScoreMaster for free. That's right. Try it for free and see how many plus points you can add. Go to scoremaster.com/breakdown. That's scoremaster.com/breakdown. One more time.
Scoremaster.com/breakdown.
Break it down. Kevin Sussman.
Yes.
You're from Staten Island.
Yes.
That's a place in New York. And the Staten Island Ferry is a thing that you take.
I've taken it so many times. When I went to school, I used to get on it to go back to Staten Island at the end of the day, and I'd pull out in that awesome cityscape with the World Trade Center.
That's right.
And I used to think all the time, one day I'm going to live there. And then I did briefly, and I was like, this sucks unbelievably.
Can you tell us a little bit? There are many boys in your family. Tell us a little bit about kind of your family, like a little bit about how you grew up and what your folks did and what order you are in the siblings.
I'm last in siblings and in life. I have 3 older brothers. My parents had license plates on the car that said 4 sons. That was before any of us had brought shame to the family. And I grew up on Staten Island. I'm the only one that has sort of a creative vibe going on. The rest of them all have normal jobs and lives. My parents were both teachers. My mom was a nurse/teacher. My dad was a teacher and then an assistant principal for English at a high school in Staten Island that I went to. I took advantage of that at every point, getting out of class and taking the hall room pass to cut classes. I would hide in the book room. I wasn't a great student, so I really didn't have a choice. I had to go into the arts.
How old are your brothers? How much older than you are they?
They're all a year apart, and the youngest of them is 3 years older than me.
What's that story?
I think we could all take a stab at what that story means.
The license plate used to say 3 boys.
Yeah, exactly. It's crossed out. Yeah, no. And then they updated it. Whoops, 4 boys.
Hold on, before we move on, I'm curious with the boys and their age grouping. Did they pick on you as the youngest, or you were enough younger that they were like, oh, you're a cute little thing that we should not beat up?
They would pick on me sometimes, but at the same time, if someone from outside the group picked on me, they would, then become my protectors.
Yeah.
I think that's probably pretty common.
There's a lot of specialness to you. One of your features as a performer is, you have this very kind of self-deprecating, kind of nebbishy, quality about you as an actor. And in real life, in the real world, I find you a very charming, and kind of playful version of that. I think the real Kevin is a lot more, lot more dimensions than obviously the character that you played on The Big Bang Theory. And I guess I'm wondering, what was young Kevin like? Like, were you a small Woody Allen child?
I identified with Woody Allen. When I was in high school, I was a big fan of Woody Allen. This is pre-Scandal. There was no shame involved in appreciating Woody Allen. It was just his funny, silly movies. And I identified with that a lot. His neuroses. Before I was a working actor, one of the mistakes that I made as an actor sometimes was I was a little too Woody Allen-esque. I almost delivered stuff with his cadence and stuff because, I enjoyed him so much. And then as I guess if you can say I matured a little as an actor, I sort of realized, oh, wait, the best thing to do is to just be as me as possible. People have described my comic sensibility as dry, and a lot of that I chalk up to being the youngest in a group of 4 boys all vying for attention. And they were always sort of, they were older, they were more mature, they were funnier, and I developed an ability to pick my moments, because I couldn't sort of barge my way into affection. I had to develop a sense of, at least I think this is what happened, I had to develop a sense of timing, so that, when there was a lull in the conversation, I could snipe a joke. I'm not sure. Was that a defense mechanism to get in there and grab the love while I can, a love sneak attack through comedy? Maybe. I think maybe that was partly what informed that sort of dryness that people sometimes, credit my comic sensibility with.
Do you remember being an anxious child? Like, was there anxiety in your home? Because what I picture, I picture the Sussman house. I want them all exactly like you. I picture that there's 4 different, versions of you as the children. And then I picture that, you're all a smaller version of your dad, but also your mom's like that too. Because it's just the image that I want to have of this kind of personality. I mean, I'm sure there's differences there, but do you know, there's an anxious energy about you. There's an anxious energy about me. So I guess I'm wondering if you remember that as a child, or if it's something you picked up from your parents, or if it was just you. Maybe all of your siblings are very suave, charming models.
Ha! I'm the only suave one. No, actually, we're very different. We have a very different vibe, all 4 of us, and in a lot of different. I mean, all of my brothers are funny, but in different ways, and I'm definitely the most neurotic, and the most anxiety prone. And we're different. Also physically, we're so different.
When did you start acting?
I was in plays in high school and stuff. Does that count?
Yeah, sure.
And then I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts after high school, and then continued studying after that. It was just a 2-year program, and then I studied. It was just enough time to get me completely confused. Mayim famously has not had formal acting training.
I have
think
not,
about
and
that a lot.
keep you up at night.
Because I think so much of acting training is like counterproductive, gets you in your head, screws you up. Even good training sometimes, I think it takes like years and years to figure out the difference between like acting training jargon and actual like being able to actually incorporate that as an artist.
So you actually trained with one of the most famous people you can train with.
Uta Hagen. Yeah, after school I trained with her, and she actually, and I was like, at that point I was so confused, and I would say, yes, but we learned from your book in acting school that, yada yada yada, and she would be like, no, you have nothing, you've learned nothing, and she'd put down her little poodle and get up and explain why all of the training where they misinterpreted her work. And thank goodness I got a chance to do that, because the main thing that I learned from her that nobody in the acting school really talked about, the main difference with her training was that if it doesn't work, if these tools aren't helping your imagination, if they're getting in the way, then don't use them. Like, she would always frame the stuff that she was telling us in terms of, this is what works for me. What I try doing is, that type of thing.
So one of the things that is hard for me about formal training, I mean, I can't help it that I never had formal training, but I've had many opportunities, in my life to take up, formal training. One of the problems that I have, and I've actually never spoken about this, I mean, I've talked to you about it a little bit, with acting stuff, my level of anxiety surrounding performing is very, very high. That's a high level of anxiety. And when I've tried to do things like improv, things that are very kind of free form, I freeze. Like, I freeze. And it's like an instant, it's like that instant knot in your throat, as if your esophagus has been like taken and, like it's stuck and there are tears there. Like, I want to cry. And what I've also noticed is it's not that I don't like being told what to do. There's something about that interaction with instruction also that kind of does the same thing for me. I've had this a handful of times when working on Big Bang Theory, when there was a certain way they wanted a line delivered, and I was like, oh, okay, I got that. I'll do that in the next take. And I do it, but it's still not right. And sometimes it's that, like, the audience isn't laughing, like, it's not funny. And sometimes it's just that, like, that our director, Mark Sandrowski, or Chuck Lorre or Bill Prady, they would want something different. But that I can usually do about like 4 takes or 5 takes before like the throat starts doing that thing. So I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit, Kevin, because you and I are both kind of, anxious performers, but we have a very different kind of method around it. Like, we've more than once, we've had plans. We play Dungeons and Dragons together, just in case anyone's like shocked that happens.
Shocked that 2 nerds have played Dungeons and Dragons.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Away.
Away is a modern lifestyle brand that creates thoughtful products for every traveler and every kind of trip. They started with the perfect suitcase, crafted with features that make travel more seamless, and now travel looks more different than it ever did before, so you can count on Away's range of suitcases, bags, and accessories whenever you take your next trip. I'm excited to take a trip with Jonathan.
Where are we going?
Away. Whether it's a trip to the corner store, a weekend away, or extended stay with friends and family, we're all navigating the current reality of travel. No matter what your destination or style, Away's suitcases, bags, and accessories come in a variety of colors, sizes, and materials to suit your needs and inspire your future travels. I love my Away suitcase because I'm the kind of person who never really thought to care about what I used, and I travel a ton. But this is a really, really perfect way for me to feel good about my trip in a way that's more organized and, yes, more stylish. All of Away's suitcases are designed to last a lifetime with durable exteriors that can withstand even the roughest of baggage handlers, that would be me. Every suitcase comes with an interior organization system, which makes a huge difference for packing and unpacking. It has built-in compression pads to help you pack more in, and I do love a removable laundry bag to separate my dirty clothes. There are 4 360-degree spinner wheels that guarantee the smoothest roll, even through the most hectic of airports and situations, including children wanting to ride on the suitcase. They're available in different materials. How about polycarbonate? How about aluminum? How about durable nylon? And a variety of colors and sizes. And a TSA-approved combination lock keeps all of your belongings safe. Away products are designed to last a lifetime. If any part of your suitcase breaks, their customer service team will arrange to have it fixed or replaced, which is amazing. There's a 100-day trial on everything. Take the product out on the road. Live with it. Travel with it. Get lost with it for 100 days. If it's not for you, you can return any non-personalized item for a full refund during that period. Away offers free shipping and returns on any order within the contiguous US, UK, Europe, and Canada.
Yeah, there we go. Start your 100-day trial and shop the entire Away line of travel essentials, including their best-selling suitcase, at awaytravel.com/MBB. That's awaytravel.com/MBB.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Daily Harvest.
You know, when the weather is warm, the last thing that I want to do is be all sweaty in my kitchen, cooking over a flaming hot stove. No thanks. But also, I don't want to order takeout for every meal. I mean, I do, but I shouldn't. And I've been very, very thrilled with Daily Harvest in my life. Daily Harvest is harvest bowls, flatbreads, smoothies, and they're all made from organic fruits and vegetables. They come right to your door. It takes minutes to prepare, and it's good for you.
It's delicious food.
It's super delicious. Daily Harvest doesn't use preservatives, added sugar, or artificial anything. They have plant-based ice cream, which is just about as amazing as it sounds, and their stuff's gluten and dairy-free.
I'm a super hippie. I don't like anything in my food that isn't natural, and Daily Harvest.
You have liked everything that I have made you. We had a killer flatbread. It had like red cabbage and kale. We had the smoothies, and they have these little packets of the almond milk, and you put them in the blender with the thing. It was so
Thanks to
easy.
Daily Harvest, Mayim cooks again.
Daily Harvest is all about leaving the earth in a better place than they found it. Not just for us, but for future generations to come. They focus on increasing biodiversity, investing in organic farming practices, reducing food waste, and prioritizing recyclable and compostable packaging, which is the first thing I noticed. I was like, there's something different about this packaging. Daily Harvest is delicious food built on whole organic fruits and vegetables that conveniently stays fresh in your freezer. It's ready when you are. It is really the whole package.
Stay cool, calm, and collected during the summer heat. Go to dailyharvest.com and enter code BREAKDOWN to get up to $40 off your first box.
$40?
$40. That's code BREAKDOWN for up to $40 off your first box at dailyharvest.com. That's dailyharvest.com.
Try the flatbread. More than once, you've canceled or had to, bow out of a game because you had an audition like the next day. And I remember like both of the times this has happened in recent memory, I've said to our friend Eric Kaplan, like, he's so perfect. He's so good. Why can't he come out and play tonight? And you do have a level of kind of discipline surrounding your craft, which I wonder, is it related to performance anxiety? Like, what is that for you?
I just didn't want to play with you.
Oh, stop it.
No, I'm
That's
kidding.
not
I'm kidding.
true.
No, that's a great question. And yes, it is. That's exactly why I tenaciously guard any preparation time that I can get. One of the wild things about the Big Bang Theory that I think most people don't realize is how little time we actually got to rehearse, because our work the last 5 years or whatever, we didn't even work on Fridays. And one day of the week was set aside for like tech rehearsal. So you're not really rehearsing. So that's 3 days, because we also didn't work on weekends. 3 days, we would go over each scene
Twice?
maybe a couple of times. When you think about like a Broadway production, right? They have at least a solid, at the very least, month, 2 months.
Absolutely. Every day, all day.
Yeah, and we have for these scenes like a solid go over them a couple of times, and then boom, we're doing. And so I always wanted more rehearsal time, and yeah, so one of the things that creates anxiety for me with for an audition or for any performance is just not feeling prepared. It's less getting up in front of people. That's not what creates the anxiety. For me, it's feeling unprepared.
Where is that anxiety, anchored? Is it is it the producers? Is it your fellow actors? Is it yourself?
Almost all of the anxiety is unnecessary and counterproductive. If I thought it through, it probably doesn't even wind up in a logical place. Probably like the big picture, what is the anxiety about, is about not doing well enough. It's screwing it up so that I won't I won't be able to continue doing the thing that I love. And the irony is that the anxiety makes it not pleasurable to begin with. The whole thing is counterproductive. Reminds me of when I was doing a pilot for Fox, and it was one of my first like big jobs, and it was the table read for the pilot episode, and there were like all these people and executives, and Gary Shandling was a guest of the, he was friends with some of the producers, and he was there, and I was sitting at the table. I didn't know anybody, and Gary Shandling took a look at me, and he came over and he said, "Don't worry about anything, ever." That's my advice to you in life, because he saw that I had anxiety, and this is a man who, if you've ever seen there's like a multi-part documentary series on Gary Shandling, so much. He was a very philosophical, super talented comedian and actor. So much of the things that he thought about were about anxiety and worry and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, it's rarely helpful. I remember reading. I read or saw something. I don't remember the source once, but I believe it to be true that most worrying that we do is like the issue that you're worrying about it. Any solutions that you presently can come up with, you'll come up with in about 5 minutes. And anything beyond that is just a waste of time and energy. And it's just we're hardwired to have this fight or flight response that is evolutionarily so old and antiquated. And the things that we worry about, like getting up in front of people and being funny, is not a thing. There's no real reason to trigger your fight or flight response. And so it's just a waste of time. It's a total head trip to get yourself. It's one thing to know that intellectually. It's something completely else to experience that.
When you're having that level of anxiety, when you said, oh, you could come up with the answer in about 5 minutes, sometimes if you're stuck in that anxiety loop, you can't come up with the answer. So you maintain that. And what you really need to do before you can get any other positive solutions is quell the anxiety and calm it down a little bit so that you can think. And Mayim, you could explain the brain science of why that is. But...
Yeah, well, I think, that's actually, Kevin, when you were talking about this, that's sort of what I was thinking. Like, if we take you or me, I'm not a person who is selectively anxious only when I need to perform, right? Like, I'm a person who...
A lot of anxiety.
I have a lot of anxiety. I mean, I'm a person who has a baseline level of anxiety, which, has been really coming out in my body, meaning like I've been a nail biter my whole life. We've talked about this a little bit here. This is a notion of course, mind over matter is a thing, But also, some of us are born with a predisposition to a more anxious state. And that's not a choice, right? That's not a choice any more than the other things about us, our eye color. And, we're born with a set of coping mechanisms. We're born with, a set of genes that are expressed for particular reasons. And in particular, in certain gene pools, the Eastern European Jewish gene pool being one of them, there's a lot of favoring evolutionarily of vigilance genes and high hypervigilance. When people hear that I'm shy or that I'm socially anxious or that like parties make me cry, people are surprised to hear that. I have people tell me all the time, like, how do I get your confidence? I'm like, no, I don't consider myself a confident person. And for me, like a very safe place is being on stage. I was never intimidated by the audition process. I started in school plays, in elementary school. But mostly other kids didn't really get me. And I didn't really get the things that other kids were interested in. It hasn't really changed much as an adult, honestly. But what I knew is that there was something about that approval system, like really that feedback loop worked for me. And, for me, my anxiety with performing, like it's really no different than it was when I was 10 years old, standing in front of Ms. Drake. It's my job to make you happy with what I do. And I don't even need to be entirely happy. Like how many times on Big Bang Theory, right? Do we deliver a line because they told us to deliver it that way and we don't want to deliver it that way, but it gets the job done. They're happy and we move on. Like for me, that's what's satisfying. So when people are like, oh, you don't like to watch yourself? No, that's horrible. Like I look funny, I sound funny, I walk funny. Everything about me does not work for me. That's not my job. Like, of course I have anxiety about all those things, but that's why it's not my job to watch myself. Like that would be a curious job to have. Your job is to perform and then watch yourself.
I'm curious, Kevin, if you have a similar experience to anxiety, if you're nervous on the stage or if it's just in auditions, does it like always happen for you or do you find a comfort spot?
You were just saying that when you're watching yourself, that's what leads to anxiety. Me as a performer, it's similar. If I'm thinking about myself, then I get distracted and then I start watching myself in the moment, robbing the audience of the opportunity to see me as the character. And that's when everything starts to go downhill. When I am the most, I don't want to say confident, but outside of my head, when I'm not being self-conscious, it's when I am able to put my attention on someone else. Usually if, it's in a scene, I'm able to put my attention on one of the other actors. Barring that, putting my attention on something about the imaginary circumstances that I'm in. And this goes back to me. That's why I want a lot of time to prepare, because I know that I need to make what's going on in the scene more interesting than what's going on in my head about in terms of like how I'm doing in the performance. And I feel that this, like most things that I believe to be true about acting, are true about life. I think that in life, outside of performing, when I become anxious, it's almost always because I'm in my head rather and thinking about myself rather than putting my attention out there in the world on somebody else or something else. That I think that is, to me, that feels like a universal truth.
How do you pull yourself out? What strategies, techniques, both on stage and in real life? Because I love that connection that your anxiety and experience of anxiety is very similar in both places.
There was a time while we were on Big Bang that I had an Alexander technique coach that I was seeing. And Alexander technique is basically it's a way of getting rid of bad physical habits mostly with your posture and your alignment. A lot of people carry a lot of tension in their head and neck and back. And one of the fundamental principles of this technique, which isn't, necessarily Alexander technique isn't just for performers, but it's great for
Many famous
performers.
actors have endorsed it, though.
Yeah, it's basically just body mechanics, and the main principle is that all of us go through our lives sort of resisting having both emotional responses and also habitually giving ourselves physical tension, because we get into these like minor fight or flight responses on a daily basis throughout our day. And like a natural fight or flight response for most people is sort of like your shoulders go up and your head goes back. And I think, I'm not an expert on Alexander technique. This may even be wrong, but whatever, it's worth actually looking into it if you're interested. But I think what winds up happening is when you do this, you shorten your rib cage, you tense up your body, and you can't really breathe.
No, it's not. You're not getting correct oxygen. Well, and the reason that I brought this up, and the reason that I was so fascinated by it when you and I talked about it, well, first of all, this is not an endorsement for the Alexander technique in particular. But what fascinated me was that the Alexander technique is a perfect example of what Jonathan and I really are so fascinated by, which is the integration of the body and the mind. And the notion that the way you physically hold yourself, and that when you hold yourself in certain ways that you get accumulations of, muscle fibers doing what they have to do to support the structure of your body being held a certain way, it affects things like the amount of oxygen that's going to get to your organs. It is like that. That's a real thing. And once different organs and organ systems and cells have different amounts of oxygen than your normal state, it's going to affect your mood. It's going to affect your coping. It's going to affect how you deal with things. And when you had started this, I had just started doing some very interesting mind-body somatic work. Typically, mine falls more under the category of like PTSD therapy and trauma work. But what struck me was that so much of what you were doing and what I was doing had a similar language. It was like checking in with your body, knowing where your body is in space, like having that awareness and mindfulness. And it just got me thinking, like, there's so many different ways we're all trying to get, at serenity, lack of anxiety, all these things. So many similar roads, but also, and we don't have to get into detail, but you and I also have had, some similar ups and downs, in our personal lives. So I also remember, I got divorced and I dated someone after that and had a really hard breakup. And, my father passed away during our time on the show. And like, we also, all of us, we got to be together through learning about everybody's lives. And, we learned about each other's relationships and each other's home lives. And so also I know that, I ended up in your dressing room a lot. Like, I may have cried once or twice in your dressing room. No, but also just really was so grateful, and am so grateful to know you because you understand those things about me. And having people who are going through and who kind of have your kind of brain is very important, especially when you have an anxious brain. Because so many people, I don't know what suggestions you've gotten in your life, but the suggestions I've gotten of like, you need to eat meat. That's the problem. Oh, okay. They're like, you need to do a past life regression, or you need to get an astrology reading, or you need a full blood panel workup, or you and I also share allergies, right? Like we have a lot, like
we've both had full panel workups.
we've both had like there's been times when it's been like a which skin ailment is one of us going to talk about with the other person this week.
In life in general, I don't want to say that I'm not a spiritual person, but I like evidence-based stuff. One thing that I will say about Alexander technique, which is essentially just being aware of habitual physical tension that you have so that you can let go of it, so that your body can process whatever emotion that you're going through fully so that you can get past it, rather than having some emotion come up and then squeezing squeezing it down. That makes sense to me in a non-spiritual way, like you're physically preventing yourself from experiencing whatever emotion. So like if you're trying to perform, you can't fully be relaxed or fully be expressive in an emotional way because you're literally holding on to the muscles that you need in order to have a level of relaxation in your breath and physicality so that you can be fully present. And I think that, the reason why I started studying Alexander wasn't because of a performing thing. It was because I don't know if you remember this, Mayim, but the reason why I started doing it was because I was going through a very difficult thing in my personal life. And I'm not a big crier. And this thing was so, I was going through such a hard time that I started crying. The floodgates opened, and it was like, in a way, it was a relief. I'm used to holding back the tears, and my body was like, fuck it, we're going, we're doing this. And I wept for like days, like I was, that emotional thing in my guts was closer to the surface. And I can't remember if I had an audition or something. I did some kind of performance related thing in that period, and I realized, there's a whole big chunk of my palette that I have not been using because it hasn't been available to me, because I always sit on it. And that's when I realized, so this very difficult emotions in my real life and in my professional life have been holding me back because I'm not allowing myself to fully experience them. And the irony in life, I think, is that when you are repressing physically emotions, whatever it is, love, pain, fear, anxiety, rather than being fully open to them, it's actually more excruciating. So when you are trying to, if you're sad, you should cry, because that is the body's natural way of dealing with pain, both emotional and physical. But if after a lifetime, especially for a guy, being told that, don't cry, don't cry, even people that love you, when they see that you're upset, they say don't cry, sometimes not as like a macho thing, but as they think that it will hurt you more.
It's actually their discomfort. That's why people say don't cry. Yeah.
Yeah. If they wanted you to feel better, they would say cry, because that's the body's, that's the body's way of dealing with difficult stuff. And it works better than drugs and whatever weird, coping mechanism people usually skip past the natural, one of the more, reliable ways to deal with that kind of thing.
My father died, 5 years ago, and I remember that the first time I had to act, like the first time I had to act a week later on The Big Bang Theory, you know? And I remember that for like the first year, which, you know, I said Kaddish for my father for a year. And I remember it was about that timing when like all of my notes from Chuck Lorre were like, not sad. You're not supposed to be sad. You're supposed to be angry. Like, you know, whatever the scene was. Like I was always fighting with Sheldon that year, whatever it was. And he was just like, why are you sad? Like, why are you acting sad? And I was like, right. And so that was just an indication like, ooh, that's seeping through. But like, God knows what else seeps through all of us all the time, right? All of our grief that just like comes pouring out everywhere. But I remember that when I did something that wasn't Big Bang Theory, I think it was later that summer, and I had to be sad in a scene, and like I could conjure tears like that. Like I've never been able to cry on command, you know, as an actor. It's not, you know, there's those like soap opera actresses and they can just like instantly like pretty tears. No. And I remember I used to like try and practice like looking in the mirror when I was, you know, younger. I couldn't do it. But when my father died, it was like everything was right here, you know? And I thought, boy, is that what it's like, you know, to have that access to those emotions? And I remember my therapist said to me, like, what you're feeling now, like in the most acute phase of grief, she said, hold on to it because it is the closest you'll ever be to him. And I think about that with the emotions that we have to have, especially when we're doing dramatic work, you know? Like they have to be available, you know? There have been times in my life when I've taken medication, and there have been times in my life when I haven't taken medication. And what I've noticed is that, you know, for those of us who are double, triple, or quadruple winners, anxiety is not my only thing. Like I should be so lucky that my only thing is anxiety. But for me, you know, depression can get much more dangerous, you know. I've made an active choice that even in times like now when I am on a medication, I don't specifically additionally medicate for anxiety. And the reason is a lot, you know, I'm a person who doesn't like to be on medication. I don't like any medication and, you know, but there's a certain amount, you know, of anxiety that I kind of, it's kind of with me all the time. And, you know, if you speak to any kind of classic Western psychiatrist or really even most therapists, and if you were to go down the list, the checklist of the things that, you know, I mark off as, you know, anxiety features, they would be able to say, like, there's a pill for that, you know? Oh, and if that one doesn't work, we got 6 more you can try, you know? And, you know, one of the things that they often give to us anxious people are things like Xanax, you know, like, which are essentially, they're sedatives.
Yeah, I was on for a little while. I can't even remember the name of it now. It's another really popular one. Well, it made me really sleepy. And that's the reason why I stopped taking it. Not that it wasn't effective in terms of making me less anxious, but it was.
You were less awake. It's less time to be anxious if you're sleeping more.
Yeah. And it was just for the type of stuff that I have to do for my job, it was just that particular side effect didn't work for me.
Right. And sometimes those, just for our audience at home, sometimes those side effects affect different people differently. Not everyone will have the same side effects. Sometimes they go away. Sometimes it can be months. I like to point out that there was a medication, I won't say the name of it, but this medication that other people have a lot of success with, people really like this drug. Within 36 hours of me taking it, I was markedly violent.
Wow.
And it was like it was a wow feeling. I was like, what is this feeling? And I remember I left my psychiatrist a message at the time, and I said, I'm feeling really, really not okay. And I described to her what I was feeling, and she called me right back and she said, okay, please stop that medication immediately. So that was just a little, you know, note on side effects. But, you know, I also have known people who have taken medication for the first time, often in their 20s or 30s, and have said, oh my God, like I didn't have to live the way I was living. And, you know, even with therapy and even with all the other things in the world, we really, we have a culture that has evolved this kind of convenience, to be able to say you're behaving and perpetuating behavior in a way that you are deficient in certain chemicals,
Yeah, no, I do think that everybody's like biochemistry is, it's like everything else. It's on a sliding scale, and if there's a drug that helps, I think that's a great thing. Like I said, the one that I was on, I just had to weigh the side of. I mean, it worked. It served its intended purpose, but just the side effects were too, like, I wasn't able to
Well, and there are other ways to manage anxiety. You had a spell as a pretty avid cyclist.
Yes, I still spin. I was a cyclist, and I broke my femur, and now I have a spin bike that I got at the beginning of the lockdown. The exercise thing, not only does it create like a natural high, but for me, more so, I think, is that when I'm exercising regularly, it puts me to sleep at night. And getting more sleep is, again, another one of these natural anti-anxiety things that is huge. And like many people with anxiety, I have sleep issues. Oh boy, when it's time for me to go to sleep, forget it. Okay, let's review everything I did that day that, I have anxiety about, and then weigh it against everything I've done in my past, going back to when we went from 3 sons to 4 sons. I mean, so yeah, exercise, if for nothing else, even without all the other great benefits of exercise, just the fact that it helps, knock me out at night it's great. I have nothing bad to say about exercise in terms of controlling anxiety, except for the fact that it's hard.
Do you meditate?
I think meditation is great, but I don't have the discipline for. I would actually rather get on my spin bike and knock myself out and then like get more sleep that night. Just for me, everybody has their own thing. I wish that I were more disciplined in terms of meditation. When I have meditated, it's never a bad thing. But for me, it's easier for me to get my ass on a spin bike or do push-ups or something like that. Where I can feel it easier, and it doesn't I know people, every therapist that I've ever gone to has recommended that I meditate. It's just I don't do it as much as I probably should. I also don't exercise as much as I probably should. And if I'm going to do one of those two things, it's going to be exercise.
Tell us about the therapy that you've tried.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I've been to many different therapists, and let's see, the 2 most helpful things were probably exercise, meditation. The therapists are always big on meditation, and I usually try it a little bit, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. I should do this more, and before I stop. And also another big one of my therapists at one point was like, next time you because one of my anxiety things that I do is I will obsess, and I will roll something over in my mind over and over and over and over
Rumination,
again.
Yeah.
And one of them was like, what you should do is take, when you have a thing that you're obsessing about, write it down on a piece of paper so that you can, not ignore it, and then crumple up the piece of paper and throw it away. You've dealt with it and now move on, which goes back to the thing about so much time that we spend worrying and obsessing is a waste of time. And Mayim, I saw you make that face. Crumple up the piece of paper and throw it away. And here's the thing, I semi-agree with the face that you made, because that for me falls under the category of sometimes that can work. That there are things, you and I think we've talked about this as well, probably in terms of like auditioning and stuff, the head fake. Sometimes you can
Right.
psych out your brain. There have been times where I've freaked out about an audition because I really wanted it, which is like the king of anxiety when you want some, like when the opposite of attachment leads to anxiety. For example, when I auditioned for Liberty Heights, I remember I was waiting outside with someone who would help me with this audition. And I said, and I was waiting there and I felt the anxiety mounting, and I said just to like stop obsessing about like the anxiety, because I had done the work. I had a lot of time. I knew that I had done the work. At this point, the only thing that was going to get in the way was myself. And to get myself out of that place, I turned to the person next to me and I said, "You want to play a game?" And we're going to play some kind of like improv game or something. And right at that moment, just coincidentally, the casting director said, "Kevin Sussman." And because I was about to play a game, my head, just by accident, was in sort of a playful state. And I walked into the audition and I was able to play, which is like the best place that you want to be. However, that falls under the category of like, sort of a mind trick that you're like, that's the type of thing that you can get away with once. And the next time you try it, your mind is like, yeah, no, I'm on to you. Another example of that, I had another audition. I don't remember what it was for, but I was doing the thing again where I had done the work and I felt like, oh my God, I can get this, which is a whole like anxiety thing in itself. Like the fact that I knew I had done good work and I could possibly get this created its own anxiety. And I had done this screwed myself a bunch in the past with this way of thinking where like, I know I'm good. I know I've done the work. I freak myself out. I go in, I have anxiety that gets in the way of me fully being great. And then I screw up the audition. I'm in my car on the way home and it's like, there's no more anxiety and I do it perfectly. And this one time I had done the work. I was about to go in. I felt myself getting anxious and I sort of like tricked my mind by saying, you know what? I know this feeling. This is the feeling of you're about to go in and screw it up. So why don't we skip that and go straight to like what you would do if you were in the car on your way home, that feeling of liberation where there's nothing at stake because you've already fucked it up. and they called me in and I went in that car ride on the way home mindset of complete liberation and nailed it, booked the thing. Of course, next time I auditioned, I tried to get my head right in that same, and it didn't work.
The loops that we get in, though, the fact that you can know you're getting in a loop. And so I love that idea of, oh, you're about to play a game and then that tricks you. Like we are looking for those self tricks. And we were talking about this the other day, Mayim, where one thought leads to the other. And when we're used to allowing those thoughts to just run anxiety loops, it's very, very hard.
When I was working on Burn After Reading with George Clooney, I was talking to him about this, about auditioning and nerves. And he said that before ER, he was like a guest star on things here and there.
I worked with him on Facts of Life.
Oh,
he was
yeah.
a regular. He and I worked together on Facts of Life in 1988.
We got to find the pictures of that.
Oh, there is a picture, I believe.
I would love to see that. But anyway, yeah, he said that he was in a place where he was getting like Facts of Life, getting guest star roles. And every time he went in for a lead role in a pilot, he freaked himself out and would screw up the audition. And then one day he basically came to terms with himself and told himself that there's nothing when he goes in for these pilot auditions for these lead roles, he keeps freaking himself out, and he learned to think of it like he doesn't already have the job going in. So he has nothing to lose because he doesn't have it already. And he said that he had that epiphany about like realizing he doesn't have it already. So there's literally nothing to lose. And he said he went in right after that epiphany, auditioned for ER, and boom.
Okay, but everybody needs to relax because here's the thing.
Here's where Mayim's going to ruin all of our fun.
I'm going to ruin everybody's good time. This is why I no longer am dating the actor I was dating. Because you can also be so good. You can be so prepared. You can be so right for it. You can also kill the audition and still not get the job. And this is the ultimate anxiety and neurosis of the actor. And for me, I go into every audition assuming I'm not going to get it. I'm a piece of shit. I'm uglier, fatter, and less desirable than everyone else. And then you just see what happens.
But maybe that's what you need in order to free yourself up to just go in and do what you have to do.
Clearly.
And getting yourself out of your own way is essential to see how the cards play out.
I get myself out of my way because I'm so distasteful that I shouldn't even be in my own way. No one should have to be that close to me.
I don't know if there's an Alexander method for that.
There's not. Kevin, thank you. I always enjoy our time together so much, and I learned a lot today, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. This is fun. Great to see you.
He's very thoughtful. He's very, very intelligent, and a lot of times anxious people make me very anxious, but I actually feel very at home with him.
Talk to us about the science of crying.
Cortisol has been found to be released in tears. Cortisol is a stress hormone, which, the most simple explanation of that is that crying is one of the ways that we release stress from the body. We release that hormone. Crying is also, it is a physical process. And when you think of kind of the shape that you take when you're racked with sobs, is what they say. I cried like this just the other day. You saw it. It's like
you sure did.
Your body gives out at my father's grave. I was brought to my knees with tears because like all of your energy goes towards producing these sounds, and which can be wails, And of course there's cultural aspects to this, different ways we cry. In general, in our culture, men are not encouraged to cry. I remember the first time I noticed that my older son needed to cry and was holding back tears. And he was probably a tween, And I remember thinking, well, where the heck did he learn that? Like, how does that happen? It's culture. There's nothing about boys that means they don't deserve to or need to cry.
I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to just pick a number, which is not a scientifically validated number by any stretch.
This is my favorite part of the show.
I would say that there is a very high percentage of men in North America who are absolutely cry constipated. They just don't know how to do it.
I think that's a very, very true statement. Y'all don't even know how to do it. It's like you're still like holding it in and it's coming out here, but it has to come out the whole body. Like if you don't hyperventilate, it's not a good cry. Part of this, absolutely, it is cultural. There's cultural aspects to this, but women tend to be more verbal in general. Women tend to be more socially enmeshed. In general, we are talking more, and talking is going to lead, I think, to crying.
I'm going to go on another limb and say that when you experience that depth of crying, and it literally looked like your entire soul was being wrung out, I'm not joking. It were like the sounds that were coming out of you, the body posture, the intensity. That while you couldn't fend off an animal or protect yourself in that moment. So
you could have gotten like my bank account passwords at that point.
No, you were incoherent. You wouldn't have shared anything. The point here is that yes, in an evolutionary standpoint, you are weak from immediate predators, but what you're able to access in that moment as a cleanse, as a release of that stress hormone. The depth of that wringing out, I think, is exceptionally powerful.
I don't know. I slept really well that night. Also, everybody's wondering, why did Jonathan make her cry? Jonathan didn't make me cry.
It wasn't me. Despite that look, it still wasn't me.
Anyway, crying is something that is done out loud as a way to let others know I'm hurting. The cry of a newborn is supposed to be one of the most astonishingly disturbing sounds there is, because it's supposed to make you sit up out of a dead sleep and say, I better tend to that thing right quick.
Or it might die.
Or it might die. Please go to my website, bialikbreakdown.com, BIALIK breakdown.com, for more resources about anxiety, about crying.
There you can also ask Mayim anything, and we have an Ask Mayim anything.
Ask Mayim anything. Yeah.
Alyssa from Los Angeles asks, how do I manage anxiety when I'm trying to fall asleep?
This actually is a great question. This came up a little bit in our chat with Kevin. The reason that I asked him about meditation is because one of the things I started implementing, which absolutely for me worked, is doing guided meditations to fall asleep. And there are free guided meditations that literally are designed to put you to sleep. I usually start with a body scan when I'm newish or just getting back into evening meditation. It's a very, very calm voice, not annoyingly calm. I use Insight Timer. It's a free app, and you can just select, do you want a 5-minute one, a 10-minute one, 15, whatever you want. And that makes me think about something other than what I want to think about. A lot of people also swear by, in 12-step programs, they call it a 10th step, where you review the day. What did I do that I didn't like? What did I do that went well? And sort of putting it aside overnight. In the Jewish tradition, there's a prayer you say, which asks God, or, something bigger than you, to guard your soul while you're sleeping. And there's definitely a mantra quality to the prayers that we say at night in the Jewish tradition. But often working out or taking a walk is a good idea. Nothing too activating. I don't mean get your sweat on for 3 hours, but an evening walk is something really good. Also really good for digestion. Not eating too close to the time you go to sleep, because your body will start trying to process and digest. And that, even if you're not getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom in the way that is more significant, your body needs to not be metabolizing actively, right when you're going to sleep. So those are some of the things for anxiety. And also, I'm just going to say it, I got a weighted blanket, and it makes a big difference. I use a catalog that is designed for children on the autism spectrum, and they sell these little weighted blankets. Not the big ones, which are very expensive. They make little ones. And I just like the feeling of it. I put it on my shoulders. I like it.
So I often have no problem falling asleep, but then sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night. And when I wake up in the middle of the night in a particular way, I know that I am turning over things that I cannot let go of. And sometimes I just have to sit down, have a journal.
You mean you're turning things over and over?
That's right.
Got it.
And I can't let them go, and I can't fall back to sleep. I just write. I write it all out. I write every possible version of it, and sometimes it's 2-3 pages even, and it's annoying to do in the middle of the night. But afterwards, I'm like, it's out of my head at least. And unlike Kevin's answer where he crumples it up and throws it away, I leave it in the book so that if I know that it's there if I need it. Because
no, the reason that I turned my nose up at the crumple away thing, I didn't get back to that. The reason I turned my nose up is that's a symbolic gesture, and other symbolic gestures are me taking that piece of paper and opening it back up and staring at it, and we absolutely have the ability to take back our will all the time. So for me, there needs to be a little bit more to it. I have something called a God box where I literally put things in there and they're not mine anymore.
I'm not saying I keep it forever, but it feels like if my brain is up in the middle of the night, it's worth hanging on to it because maybe I need to go review it at some point, and maybe there's an answer in there.
Right.
But most of the time, it's not helping me.
And the reason that I think that, yes, that works well sometimes, but generally speaking, it's good not to do things that are too activating. If you're having trouble sleeping, that's just, my little note. Anyway, do you have more what to say?
I'm just going to encourage people to Leave us a 5-star review. Recommend the podcast to a friend. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the notifications for new episodes. And
From my breakdown to the one I hope you never have. We'll see you next time.
It's Mayim Bialik's breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. She's got a neuroscience PhD or two. One fiction, one. And now she's gonna break down